Welcome to Doc NYC and the special Q&A for the film Kings of Capitol Hill. I'm Tom Powers, the festival's artistic director. I'm pleased to have with us the film's director, Mor Loushy, joining us from Tel Aviv. Mor, thank you for your film and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting us. We're thrilled.
So can I start by asking you about your own political background that gave a framework for making this film?
So I grew up in Tel Aviv, in Israel. Grew up, in a liberal, normal house in Tel Aviv. I started my career pretty early on. I think my first film was about the trips to Israel that a lot of young American Jews are doing, and I was 23. And since then, I did a couple of, political films that are more a mirror to our society, the place that we're at, our identity as Israelis. And my last film before Kings of Capitol Hill was the Oslo Diaries. And it was about the Oslo Accords. So, I found myself living in Los Angeles for 2 years. So I just, so of course the Jewish community, I was part of it, and I was very curious to hear, and just the story was just there as I started listening to the community.
So as your film says, AIPAC, in its 60-year history, has traditionally been reluctant to give interviews. What did it take to talk to the people who, are former leaders of it?
So, the project began actually as a broader project about the gap between Israel and the Jewish community right now. And, as Israel went more and more further to the right, a gap started, and I was very interested in that. And talking to the people, I understood that AIPAC is such a, important place in the Jewish community. I mean, I just met Tom Dine, which was AIPAC CEO for 13 years, started talking to the characters that are in my film, and I was just, wow, so intrigued listening to the story, and they opened up to me. I think that they were looking to tell their story, and I think that right now the world is so divided. They wanted to share their experience. The film is really an emotional journey that they're going through with their life experience, being very liberal, very Zionist, and the journey that has been, since then.
In the film, we see ways in which AIPAC's command over political influence has been challenged a little bit. So there were Democratic candidates who didn't make visits to the organization that would have normally been routine. Can you reflect on the ways in which their influence may be starting to wane?
I'm a filmmaker, and I came, to listen and to look. And of course, that it's very important for me to mention, that I'm Israeli. Here we don't have a lobbying system. So it was all, very new to me. And of course, that I understand, that in the US there is a lobbying system. And I was very intrigued, how this lobbying system actually also, infect me on my daily life also as Israeli. How does these decisions that are made, and I didn't realize also, how much Israel and AIPAC are influencing on each other, because of course, that I don't think that, Israel really needed for its survival, the Jewish community, especially in the US. And of course that we influence each other a lot. And I was so interested to understand how those decisions that are made in DC, influence also me as an Israeli, So actually that was my point of view that curious me a lot. And also, of course, the gap between the Jewish community and the establishment. You know, are they aligned these days, or are the next generation went further to the left? And I mean, you know, and the fact that we do need to listen for the young generation and not to lose touch and not to find ourselves in a situation where the Jewish community is just will disconnect from Israel, and that is a very dangerous place for me also, as Israeli is, as a mother of two, that her kids are growing up here in Israel.
Mm-hmm. You talked about that younger generation, and since you'd earlier made a film about young Americans coming to Israel and what that experience is like for them, I wonder how much AIPAC has played a role in that journey of young Americans going to Israel, and how much their politics have helped frame that for that first experience that some young American Jews have.
You know, I think that it influenced a lot, because I mean, I've been once, you know, at the convention. I mean, and there's a very specific narrative, a story about Israel that is framed. I think that, you know, also in my history books that I learned as a kid, there's a story. So of course, I think it influenced a lot, especially because AIPAC is really playing such a crucial and important role in the Jewish community. And well, now also we see that with the next generation, of course, it plays less and less significant role, because there's so many new organizations that are saying, you know, this is not my voice. This is not how I see Israel now. And I think also, you know, it's a lot about the Jewish identity, as the Jewish identity is liberal, very liberal, you know, and how do I fix my values, being liberal and also supporting Israel? And I think that is a very important question. You know, I'm, as a filmmaker, my duty is to look at the reality, to ask questions, to raise this debate, this thought-provoking debate on the table. And I mean, I know, you know, that a lot of people will see this film one way or another, but I think that this debate is so important for everyone, for the Jewish community in the US, and also for us here in Israel. I mean, this debate, because, you know, they haven't done a lot of interviews, and because it's such a sensitive, you know, area, this debate didn't got, you know, the attention it deserved yet. And I really, really hope that this film, you know, will raise the debate. People will talk about it, that we will think, how do we want, you know, to do our shared future together, Israel and the Jewish community. How do we see our future together? Because obviously we are very well connected to each other.
One of the things that makes it difficult to have a critical conversation about Israel is very quickly you can confront the accusation of being anti-Semitic. And we see that in your film when Congresswoman Ilhan Omar had tweeted something critical of AIPAC, and we see it again and again. You know, I wonder, you know, how you think of that, you know, rhetorical device and what it means to our ability to have a conversation.
You know, I mean, I find it so disturbing that, you know, that we can't make an honest debate, and a crucial debate that we do need to answer and to ask ourselves difficult questions. And you know what, this is part of our culture also, to ask tough questions. So, I mean, of course, you know, they was on my mind, but I mean, I think that we must do this debate on the table. And I think that especially, you know, Kings of Capitol Hill comes from such a loving and caring place. I mean, these are all people that were part of AIPAC and were in the very high places in AIPAC, you know, and so it's all people that still are Zionists, that still cares a great deal about Israel, and we can't dismiss this discourse because we're afraid that it will, obviously I'm Jewish, I'm very proud, Israeli Jewish. All of the people in the film are Jewish. All the people that funded and supported this film are Jewish. So this is a 100% a Jewish film, which I do hope, of course, that this debate is important not only for us, but of course a greater debate about democracy and how we establish the future, especially now. This period, we all agree that it's such, wow, who would have imagined that we would sit today, that we can't fly anywhere. And I mean, the world is I can't even imagine in words right now with full quarantine with 2 small children. So, maybe it's the time to build something new, and it's the time to have important debates and to trying to understand how do we make a better future for our kids. What is the purpose at the end of the day? Do we want peace in the Middle East? Do we want peace, or do we want just chaos? And we want peace, and that's what is important for me.
So you and I are having this conversation in October. When people watch this conversation, it will be in November, after the US elections have taken place in some form. What are you going to be looking for in this year's elections, and AIPAC's role as being an effective lobbyist organization? Knowing everything that you know about AIPAC, where do you think their influence is going to be most felt in 2020?
So again, I can't predict the future because, I'm a filmmaker and I'm only looking at the reality. But of course, that what I want is, that the Middle East will have a solution. And I think that if people can help that happen, that will be, the best cause ever. So, and not just talking about it, not just saying slogans about it, but doing something. And we all know, I don't know, this will air in November. I don't know what will be in November. I'm crossing my fingers that, for the best result. And I think also this is a big question mark of how things will turn around, it's a big question mark, and I'm crossing my fingers that if Biden will win, so so that we can make a better Middle East here, because we are at a very, very, very scary time here in point in Israel, where my generation, people with kids, feel despair and feel that, the peace word has already been gone for so many years. We also want, a new government and a new leadership here in Israel that will take us to a better future and to a better Middle East.
So for my last question, the film just recently had its premiere inside Israel. What kind of reactions did you get to the film?
So, the reactions were amazing. The criticism that we got was, people loved it so far. It still hasn't, broadcast yet. It will broadcast before the festival, but in a month. But also we got, very good articles in Times of Israel and Haaretz and, the Jewish outlets in the US. So, I'm thrilled, because I think that also, Israelis are not so familiar with the story. And I think that we must, because like I said before, it really influenced on our daily life here as Israelis. So, it is important to raise this story and to keep fighting and, and to keep our eyes open to look at the reality, to ask tough questions. We don't have to agree on everything, but we have to keep trying and get the debate going until we'll have a more peaceful solution here in the Middle East.
Well, Mor, thank you again for this film. Thank you for bringing it to Doc NYC and joining us from the other side of the world for this conversation.
Thank you so much. Really, I mean, I can't be more thrilled for a New York premiere with your festival. Thank you so, so much.